Hello everyone, Ace here, and today, well, I'm just going to have to go ahead and say it. EA and DICE are in denial over Battlefield 2042. Now granted, this isn't exactly a massive revelation to anyone who has been paying any attention at all to this game, but even then, some recent events have demonstrated this far better than anyone could have anticipated. The first, and arguably biggest example of this that I'm going to be bringing up, was during a recent town hall style meeting between some EA bigwigs and the developers at DICE, during which EA's chief studios officer said, and I quote, "We launched in early access on a Thursday night in the US and Friday morning and afternoon in Europe and Asia. The game was stable. The mean time between failure and hours of the game was in the green by industry standards and the early critical reception was good. The day-to-day player retention looked strong through the weekend. But then things started to turn. The following Monday, Halo did a surprise release of their multiplayer mode. It was a small segment of the game, but it was very polished, and it was not a favorable comparison to our experience given some of the bugs and polish issues we had." So yes, this particular quote has become somewhat infamous for a number of reasons. For a start, the claim that the game was stable on release is a bold-faced lie, and anyone who has played Battlefield 2042 on release can tell you that. In fact, as an excellent example, the game was so unstable that it somehow managed to cause issues with my recording software, which is why I didn't actually have any footage to show during my Ace impressions, because the game was just that thoroughly broken that it actually messed with the recording software. In fact, even the quote from EA's chief studios officer had to mention that the game had bugs and polish issues, despite the aforementioned claim that the game was, quote, stable. Of course, though, the main issue that most people have with this particular quote is the idea that Battlefield 2042's problems can ultimately be blamed on Halo Infinite, which is a line of reasoning that reeks of EA simply refusing to take any and all responsibility whatsoever. Even if you want to believe that Halo Infinite somehow stole Battlefield's fandom, that would not explain the decline of the player base even amongst PlayStation players. The simple and hard reality is that Battlefield 2042 was not finished on release, and it is still not finished to this very day. But perhaps the ultimate irony here is that EA's excuse-mongering ultimately backfires once you actually think about it. Because if even Halo Infinite can do the Battlefield formula better than Battlefield 2042 can, then that is a very clear sign that EA and DICE have not actually made a Battlefield game. So that is the first example of just how thoroughly in denial EA and DICE are about the situation, but as I hinted previously, it is not the only recent example. Take for example this story from PlayStation Lifestyle titled, "Battlefield 2042 devs no longer engaging with games subreddit due to toxicity." And by toxicity, they of course mean valid criticisms by a fandom that is very unhappy for very understandable reasons. And apparently, the backlash towards DICE and EA was even enough that Reddit moderators were threatening to lock down the game's subreddit permanently. Now granted, there are claims that death threats may have been involved, and in which case, yeah, feel free to condemn the idiots responsible for those. However, having taken the time to explore the subreddit myself, the only posts that I actually saw on it were simple good old-fashioned valid criticisms and not harassment. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I am, however, saying that EA is using it as an excuse to attack the fandom as a whole, and to use it as an excuse to plug their ears from any forms of criticism whatsoever. Now granted, one of the devs did try to claim that they don't ignore all criticism. However, given the sheer amount of lies behind Battlefield 2042 at this point, I simply do not believe this person. And instead, I believe that it is a safer bet to simply assume that he is lying through his teeth. But for my next example of EA and DICE being in sheer denial over the state of their game, let's now move on to Twitter, the platform that the developers have fled to from the subreddit. In this particular case, DICE developer Nicholas Estrand decided to suggest that a picture of a building with zero cover looked like an ideal location for an MCOM. Naturally, this resulted in someone pointing out the fact that the building had no cover around it, which is something that, by the way, Battlefield 2042 is known for right now when it comes to its level designs. In response, Nicholas decided to get snarky by trying to post a picture of Battlefield 2, suggesting that this has been a running theme for the Battlefield franchise for quite a while. Now, of course, comparing your game to Battlefield 2, a far superior product that was released all the way back in 2005, might not be the best thing to do in this situation. At bare minimum, it suggests that the franchise has been stagnating since the mid-2000s, which is not really good for marketing. But somehow, things managed to get even worse for this DICE developer, because some of the more eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that this is not vanilla Battlefield 2. This is in fact a map from the Soldiers of Fortune mod for Battlefield 2. Suggesting that the developer in question is so utterly inept that they were unable to even get a picture of the vanilla game. Or at the bare minimum, they could not tell the difference between vanilla Battlefield 2 and modded Battlefield 2. But perhaps the ultimate irony here is the fact that the Soldiers of Fortune mod ended development as a beta build. In other words, this developer at DICE was effectively reduced to comparing the level designs of their game to a beta build of a mod for Battlefield 2, just to make it so that the level design of their game began to look somewhat acceptable. And rather than handle the understandable criticism that was levied his way, he instead chose this course of action. But don't worry guys, EA and DICE are totally listening to the feedback. Now normally, this would be the point where I would be providing my thoughts on this matter. However, I'm pretty sure all of you know exactly what my thoughts are on this. The only thing I really have to add here at this point is that I don't see how the Battlefield franchise will be able to survive if EA and DICE continue to choose to act like this. And I don't know just how much further things can go downhill from here. Though I will be keeping an eye open for when I inevitably get surprised yet again by just how terrible things can get. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.